Well, I got a gauge here out of a chiller room that's slightly out of calibration. Yeah, but it's a good gauge, and these gauges are expensive, and you know, they take a beating in a chiller room. You can go into a chiller room and not find a single working gauge, and so I don't know if it's on something critical. Yeah, you probably should replace it, but in a chiller room, yeah, I'm gonna try to just make it work. They sure do take a beating in chiller systems, but we're gonna try to get this bezel off of here. It'll also give us a chance to look inside the gauge, and I'll be able to show you how they work. All right, so what happens is your pressure comes up in through here, and it causes this copper tube here to want to uncurl, and when it does that, it's pulling on this linkage. You can see that little gearing mechanism is actually what's spinning the needle. Okay, so it feels smooth, you know, doesn't look like there's anything broken or messed up in there really. Pretty solid gauge, honestly. Now the first thing I want to do is see if it responds to pressure. So got this little thing I made up here. These are just different tips that can be put inside of here to get into different things, but let's just see what happens when we throw some pressure on it. Okay, so I have this set it around somewhere between 50 and 70. You know that nitrogen regulators aren't real good at low pressure stuff, but all it looks like is going on is that this is its new zero. So we just need to get this needle back, but before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and clean this out just with some denatured alcohol. Pour it down in there. Slosh it around in there. The advantage of having a big gauge like this, you know, when you're buying gauges for chiller systems, it's not just the big face, which you can see maybe if it's up on a ceiling or something like that, but you're getting really large internals. So on a little teeny gauge, this is very small. So you're better off with a big gauge like this because you're going to have a lot less like corrosion stopping stuff up in there. But all I'm doing with this alcohol is I'm just going to charge it up, just let it spit it back out. Now it looks like at the factory they can sort of adjust the entire mechanism. I don't really know. That might be a way to calibrate it, but you can't get to these screws without removing the needle, which probably going to ruin the gauge at that point to get this plate off. So what I'm going to do is just get this needle here to slip inside of there. And I don't know what causes this. I mean, if you watch a gauge on a chiller system, a lot of times they'll be bouncing around. You know, if I had to buy one, I'm probably going to go with liquid filled. And I don't know if that continual just bouncing causes the needle to ever so gradually start to move its position. I don't know what all that's about, but let's rig up our little test rig here. And I want a little bit of leakage in this. around the threads, because I'm gonna make an adjustment and then cut off the nitrogen, check it, and then recheck it. When you're calibrating gauges, it's good to calibrate it and then let it run back through its range, just to make sure it's going to stop in the right place. So let's put this yellow jacket gauge down here. All right, you can hear it leaking now. And I know that glare is really bad. Let's see if that helps a little bit, but I'm at 60 psi on my yellow jacket. So let's just get this one up to about 60. Okay. And you know, yeah, this in here is goofy, but you got to keep in mind that these gauges, they kind of just go up and sit somewhere. You're not going to be dealing with 0 psi in a chiller system unless you're working on it. You just need it to sit somewhere that's accurate. And in general, even with these yellow jacket gauges, any of your gauges, you always want to calibrate them up here in a normal range and not calibrate them to 0. All right, looks like we got that one. First try. Let's go reinstall it. Now make sure before installing the gauge that you flush this, because sometimes stuff will get corroded in there. Sometimes you even got to shut everything down, take this off, and run something down in there to clear it out. Now you want to date when you checked it and mark the arrow like this. I don't like to mark it up here because then you're dicking up the real markings. Mark it down here. Now you really got to be careful doing something like this, but I want to show you, and this is true on boilers and other things. I've got this valved off, and as long as I don't let oxygen back in, it's normally easy just to swap stuff out without losing a whole lot of water. Now I've already bled the pressure off, so there's no pressure in this, but I'm just going to unscrew it here because this valve is leaking, so we're going to rebuild that as well. Let me show you. So that's about all I'm getting. Just going to put that plug in there. So I don't care if I lose a little bit, but I don't want it dripping all over this sensor. I should have filmed the leak, but it was, you know, drip every couple seconds out of this bottom here. Now, these are kind of junky valves, but they are rebuildable, which is really nice. So in that case, they might actually be preferable to ball valves and things. But we're gonna get in here and see what's going on. It's probably a bad O-ring. Let's see. I'm gonna have to. Yeah, this stem's gonna be hard to get out. Let me. Channel locks here. There we go. Not too bad. Not too bad. All right. There's no O-rings in that, so. Probably just going to polish it up, see how that does. Again, when you got stuff apart, you just want to clear out, you know, any kind of crud you can. Let me show you how we're going to polish this. All right, I'm just going to chuck this end in here like this. Right there. All right, nice and shiny now. Now to polish the inside here, this is a taper, so I'm going to go in the top of that taper. Just like that. Alright, now get all this clean. One thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to spread this spring apart, because I want to increase the tension pulling down on that taper. So just gonna just add a little bit like that. Just don't want that silicone getting in the gauge itself, but it's very good stuff in a valve body, that's for sure. All right, give that a little wrap. All right, now this is going to be a little tricky to get on here because of the spring tension, but one thing that's really nice to have when you're doing this is a ratcheting screwdriver, so you can maintain the pressure as you're trying to get this threaded in there.
Got these gauges calibrated. I haven't marked them yet, but let's take a look at this. The smallest little seep right there, it's not really dripping anymore. That'll probably close up over time. Yes, it does need to be replaced, but for now, that's good enough. Should have rebuilt this valve right here because it's dripping like the other one was. But anyways, see how this needle is just, this gauge is getting beat up by the water hammer. So, I shouldn't say water hammer, just the pulsations and the pressure. Again, whole reason why you need liquid filled gauges. What I'm doing here is just throttling it back until I see that needle kind of stabilize right in there. Now, you got to watch that because this could corrode shut and then fix the pressure, but it's worth taking the abuse off of the gauge like that. If I replace this, it'll be a liquid filled gauge. Some of you may have noticed I forgot to cut this one on before I marked it, so I'll go in there and put a new mark. All right, there we go.